Welcome to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
Hope is having young people who you can trust the future to. The students of Hope's Peak Academy, the place I dedicated my life to, they represent my hope. Kazuo Tengen, chairman of Future Foundation.
More Danganronpa.
Yes, we're doing another revisit to Danganronpa. Now, this is like what, the fourth or fifth one in the series?
I think fifth.
Right. So what we're doing is we're doing Danganronpa as a revisit again because our plan is to try to power through and finish up our Danganronpa series because we've been doing it for a while and we're still not done. Mm-hmm. We love Danganronpa, but we kind of want to finish it up and talk about other things.
Yep.
So that's what we're going to do here today. Now, we have plenty of canned episodes for Danganronpa that you can already go listen to, so please by all means do. As usual, trigger warnings for everything. Mm-hmm. And there's a link in the description for all the executions, as well as one for who the characters are if you get confused. Feel free to jump in anytime you want as well, if you want to just keep listening to this latest one. We are starting at the end of the second game in the simulation, because, spoiler warnings and everything, right? Mm-hmm. And we are starting after the apocalypse has happened in the simulation. If you're new to Danganronpa, this all sounds confusing. Go listen to the first episode. Or not. Stick around. Please, don't leave. Anyway, we're going to finish where we left off. Last time we left off on the absolute saddest part of Danganronpa, which is where Chiaki died again.
It isn't the saddest part.
What's the saddest part?
The flashbacks in the third anime.
I think that Chiaki's death is the saddest part. What are you talking about, Kira?
I think her other death was the saddest one.
No, this death was sadder.
No, the other one.
This death was sadder because you had spent so much longer time with this Chiaki.
The other one was sadder.
No, it wasn't. The other one was more brutal.
Yeah, and that was much sadder.
Brutality does not make sadness.
Okay, whatever.
All right, so we're going to pick off from where we left off. I'm going to start first.
All right.
Monokuma had been working behind the scenes in the game's code to accomplish his true goals. By the time the big clock in Jabberwock Park hit 0, he had accomplished much tampering with the code, particularly now that he was the sole observer, no longer having to deal with Monami's influence. Alter Ego Chihiro, as the administrator, tried to stop Monokuma but was unable to sequester him, considering him a virus.
The simulation became unstable. It had never been designed for killing games, and so all of the people who had died still had some amount of themselves in the corrupted code, as some sort of ghosts in the machine. As the simulation became more volatile, some of the few surviving students saw their deceased classmates, if only for brief moments.
After Monokuma sorted out his plans, he approached the students and told them they could now graduate. Before doing so, however, he wanted them to perform one more investigation so they could learn and understand the stakes of this world. They were let into the ruined Hope's Peak building on one of the islands.
They found information about Future Foundation from some loose code, and they spoke to Chihiro for the first time. Makoto, in the real world, attempted to hack into the game to speak with the survivors, but Monokuma quickly cut the connection.
Monokuma then began the graduation ceremony, which was done in a similar manner to a trial. He unlocked access to the simulation, wanting those watching from the real world to enter the game. To stall for time, he debated with the surviving students and allowed them to figure out the nature of their situation. They learned about the tragedy and that they were in a virtual simulation. Monokuma even spawned a fake Makoto, but the students saw through the ruse.
Alter Ego Junko stopped the charade as Monokuma and revealed herself as the mastermind. She spawned herself as a giant woman leering over them with a giant cell phone that projected a smaller image of herself down to their level.
It was a pretty cool visual, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken before about how with Junko I have this weird relationship with her. She's kind of cool, but also hate her. She's a good villain. She's a good villain.
Yeah.
Junko attempted to convince the students repeatedly that they either needed to choose to graduate or repeat, but she misled them on what either of those options meant. Eventually, Makoto, Byakuya, and Kyoko entered the simulation to try to help the students and stop Junko while being spawned in the graduation ceremony. They told the students there was a third option, to activate a forced shutdown.
Junko revealed that she had planned this all along, wanting to get revenge on Makoto while accomplishing her true goal. She finally divulged everything about the true stakes of the situation. The students realized they were the remnants of despair, and that they had willingly submitted themselves to capture and had their memories wiped for Junko. Hajime realized he was actually Izuru Kamakura, a completely new person.
Junko explained that if they graduated, their virtual avatars would be uploaded into their real but mangled bodies. They wouldn't have to remember being remnants of despair, and the future Foundation members could return to their bodies as well. However, those who died had no avatars to upload. But Junko would then upload her AI into each body during the upload process, hijacking their bodies.
She explained that if they repeated, the virtual avatars would be able to remain in the simulation for as long as they wanted, but the future Foundation members would be stuck there with them. Junko would then upload her AI into all of their real bodies during the process, hijacking them. Doesn't she get trapped in the simulation too? Doesn't she have to stay there?
No, the whole point of the choice is that no matter what, she wins.
Oh, okay.
However, this third option, right? She then explained that if they forced a shutdown by pressing both graduate and repeat, the simulation would be reset. None of their virtual avatars would be uploaded into their real but mangled bodies, and they would awake in the real world. They would lose the memories of their time in the simulation, and they would instead remember everything they did as remnants of despair, though the brainwashing would not return. However, Hajime would cease to exist, instead returning to the identity of Izuru. Those who died had no virtual avatars to reset, and so they would remain vegetables. Junko's AI would be erased from the program.
The few surviving students fell into an immense despair and chose an option that Junko had overlooked. At Hajime's behest, they chose not to choose, and in doing so, chose to be in limbo within the graduation process forever. The simulation deteriorated within their minds into a limbo with all of their deceased classmates.
Within the limbo, Chiaki's ghost spoke to Hajime to convince him to make a choice. That not choosing was just hiding from the one right answer. After confronting his fears of becoming Izuru, Hajime awoke from the limbo, deciding to make a choice, making the simulation revert to what he had been doing previously in the graduation ceremony. Hajime's hair whitened with a fury in an awakened form. He convinced the other students to choose the forced shutdown, having hope within themselves that they would not fall into despair a second time.
Forced shutdown.
Oh, I do the executions, remember?
Oh, okay.
So what do you think of that?
I mean, Hope Boy.
I mean,
as usual.
It was really cool. I mean, we condensed it down, but this was like a real revelation whiplash here.
Yeah.
Because like Junko was literally drawing diagrams of okay, if you pick this one, this happens. You pick that one, this happens. But she kept lying, and so she had to keep making new adjustments as they realized she was lying. Mm-hmm. Anyway, forced shutdown, alter ego Junko's execution. Upon the activation of the forced shutdown, Monami's ghost resurrected as she was reset into Osami once more. She used her magic wand to stab Junko's giant hands, and then she slammed her head on the ground before tying her up with a magic ribbon that sliced her into 4 giant pieces that exploded in a rainbow. This is the happiest execution. It's like the music is...
Because it was Usami.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only one where the music isn't despair, it's hope. Mm-hmm. So you have Usami's theme where it's like dun, 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 and just like her killing Junko. It's like I like Junko and everything, but Do it, Usami. Usami's such an underrated character too. She was really abused and bullied and everything. So seeing her get her revenge on Monokuma, i.e. Junko, was just, I loved it. Mm-hmm. That's what you get for Chiaki.
Okay. The surviving remnants of despair included Akane, Sonia, Fuyuhiko, Kazuichi, and Izuru. They, along with Makoto, Byakuya, and Kyoko, awoke from the simulation. The rest of the students were brain-dead vegetables. Makoto, Byakuya, and Kyoko stayed with the survivors of the killing school trip for some time to rehabilitate them. They got used to their real but mangled bodies and dealt with the trauma of what they had done.
Hajime was gone, and Izuru was now back in his body. However, when the reset had happened, Chiaki's ghost had entered his mind. She hadn't uploaded herself into it, but instead merely rode as a passenger, a ghost over his shoulder. The other survivors told Izuru of who he had been as Hajime, and through Chiaki's influence, he managed to recreate the person he had once been. Izuru cut off his hair and decided to go by the name Hajime once again. One of his glowing eyes went out, signifying he possessed both the potentialities of Hajime and Izuru. But his choice was made.
Makoto, Byakuya, and Kyoko prepared a ship to return to Future Foundation. The survivors of the killing school life chose to remain on Jabberwock Island in the hopes of searching for a way to find the ghosts of their brain-dead classmates within the Neo World program.
Let's take a step back. 2014, Team Danganronpa released a spin-off game called Danganronpa Another Episode, Ultra Despair Girls, that fleshed out the backstory after the events of the tragedy. It's kind of a prequel, so we already talked about the events of that.
Mm-hmm. Ideological schisms within Future Foundation began to grow, predominantly led by two factions within, Kyosuke's and Kazuo's. Kyosuke had admired Kazuo's tenacious attitude towards fighting off despair, but as the years had passed, Kazuo's resolve became more subtle. With Junko and Ultimate Despair defeated, Kyosuke and Kazuo had very different ideas on what Future Foundation should do next.
Most people in Future Foundation believed in Makoto's vision that hope would save the day, which implied a kind approach to rebuilding the world, and Kazuo didn't oppose Makoto's celebrity vision.
However, Kyosuke believed that despair was rooted in more than just Junko and Ultimate Despair. He believed Future Foundation needed to become more authoritarian to weed out anyone who had been tainted by despair, both within the organization itself and in the rest of the world as well. Kyosuke bided his time, waiting for an opportune time for a coup, with his two most notorious supporters being Chisa and Juzo.
Calling it now, Kyosuke's a tanky.
Huh?
Furthermore, 3 of the division heads, specifically Saiko, Rurika, and Sanosuke, had a bitter history, but were now in positions to have to work together. They managed to make it work, but the relationship was tense. Rurika was fearful of being betrayed by anyone higher ranked than her, and so she also dreamt of a coup, which Sanosuke supported.
Kazuo personally found Ryota, the ultimate animator, and inducted him into Future Foundation. He eventually became the 10th division head, dedicated to education and culture. Ryota had spent his time in hiding working on his masterpiece, and his pace accelerated under Future Foundation's protection. However, his work wasn't just about making art anymore. He too wanted to rid the world of despair, but he figured he could do it the same way it had come about, through benevolent brainwashing.
What do you think about that, Kira?
He's basically making the antithesis to the despair video.
He wants to undo what he enabled.
Yeah.
Right? Kazuo had been watching Ryota closely, and so he discovered Ryota's secret project quickly. Kazuo realized Kyosuke's ideals may have had a point, but with Ryota's talent, despair could be vanquished with little bloodshed.
However, as Ryota neared the completion of his masterpiece, he stopped working on it. He became conflicted about whether brainwashing for hope's sake was ethical. Kazuo needed Ryota to finish his masterpiece, so he began to devise a way to make him do just that. Kazuo came to the conclusion that the only thing that would fill Ryota with enough despair to convince him to combat despair with his hopeful masterpiece would be another televised killing game, much like the one Makoto had survived.
It comes to that. Wow, man. Really?
I mean, I'm not surprised that's the method he chose.
Like, I get the logic, but it's the kind of logic only like a really detached CEO could come up with. Right? One that just doesn't understand how people work. Hope's Peak's overseas branch had been converted into Future Foundation's headquarters. It functioned well in such a hidden location, one they hoped Despair would never find. It was on an island off the coast of a country overseas from Japan. They never specified what country.
Yeah, they never specified where it was. Kyosuke had overseen the construction long ago and had ensured the building was built with redundancy. While most of Future Foundation was only aware of the above-ground portion of the building's underground portion had been designed as a duplicate of the above-ground portion. Kazuo and Kyosuke were the only members aware of this, treating the underground portion of the building much like an emergency shelter that was stocked with food and supplies but went unused otherwise.
It's also a very weird architectural thing, because it's not like it was mirrored. It's not mirrored. It's like you take a building and you copy and paste it on top of it. When Kazuo began his preparations for the killing game, he also began invading the privacy of his fellow Future Foundation heads. In doing so, he discovered a photo Chisa took of her killing children, and he realized that she was a spy for the remnants of Despair all along. Kazuo did not reveal he knew of Chisa's betrayal, but he did take the flash drive she had withheld from him.
Was that of the Gloomy Sunday video?
No, she had already handed him over. She had kept one, though, from Junko.
Oh, okay.
She had given him 2 of the 3.
All right. In the underground building, Kazuo prepared for the killing game. He uploaded Junko's backup AI and a Monokuma robot. The two of them came to an alliance, with Kazuo calling the shots. Kazuo wanted to use Despair for the sake of hope, but Junko wanted to use hope for the sake of despair. This iteration of Junko would be known as Junko Enoshima III, and she took on the role of Monokuma III.
Yeah, the anime really glosses over this bit, but, like, he had to have worked with Monokuma somehow, and who controls Monokuma, right? Kazuo wanted the killing game to be fully autonomous and capable of running without interference. To accomplish that, he pre-recorded segments of footage with script and direction from Monokuma, who played the lead actor. Monokuma also did the editing and the effects within the footage, as Junko did have some rudimentary animation skills.
After the recordings were made, Kazuo had Monokuma trapped somewhere off-site, as Kazuo made modifications to the underground building. He modified the balcony near the breaker room, the one that had the view into the ocean that poked out from the side of the island beneath the waves, so that the access door would be a Monokuma-themed secret door hidden behind a bookshelf.
Kazuo retrofitted many monitors throughout the underground building to play the pre-recorded footage. He set up an autonomous program that would ensure the killing game went as planned. He included Monokuma's Gloomy Sunday among the footage to be played, as the game would involve participants killing themselves. To do so, the monitors were also rigged to each dispense a ceremonial knife.
Kazuo took inspiration from previous killing games, as well as the Warriors of Hope's bracelets that were used in Towa City, and Kazuo developed the drug-filled and Monokuma-themed bangles that would be used to control the participants' behavior for game balance and timing regulation.
Yeah, so it's not quite the same as Junko's killing games. It's weird having one not made exclusively by Junko, right?
Yep.
Kyosuke was never aware of Kazuo's meddling, but he did discover Makoto's actions on Jabberwock Island. He sent out an order that Makoto be brought to headquarters to face a trial for his betrayal of Future Foundation, and arranged for military action on Jabberwock Island.
Meanwhile, on Jabberwock Island, the survivors of Class 77B have been devoting their time to reviving their brain-dead classmates. They had a strategy that worked pretty well. Hajime would dive into the Neo World program with the assistance of alter ego Chihiro, who had identified some abnormal areas in the programming. Chihiro discovered that their classmates' ghosts still existed in the code, with each consciousness creating a virtual subconscious world based on their desires and fears.
Hajime and Chihiro's avatar became known as the World Destroyer as they went into each classmate's world and brought it to ruin. As the facade of each world was destroyed, their consciousness was reset, bringing their classmate back to life, complete with all of the memories from the killing school trip.
Nagito's personal world was the deepest, most buried, and most troubled.
Of course it was.
He lived in a world where he was incredibly unlucky, one where he dreamt that talent did not exist. The World Destroyer had to kill many of his friends before Nagito confronted him. Nagito attempted to shoot him, but the bullet ricocheted and hit Nagito in the head, waking him up. The World Destroyer then brought Nagito out of the simulation. Hajime and the rest of Class 77B welcomed Nagito back to reality. They began preparing a robotic arm for Nagito and a vessel to allow them to return to Makoto.
Yeah, so this is interesting. First of all, Nagito, when they bring him out of the simulation where he was super unlucky and didn't wish talent existed, there's this quick exchange where Hajime's like, what do you think about talent? And Nagito's like, I love it. It's like, okay, you're back. Great.
That's funny.
Also, this is the biggest moment in the entire series where I think they really kind of cheapen death. Because we had just spent the last episode talking about all these characters that died in the last Killing Game. No character that dies in the Killing School trip stays dead. They all just get brought back to life right afterwards. And I guess it's because of the simulation. There's enough stakes to it that I'm not super upset about it. I would have been totally fine if the deal they had made had been honored in some way. Maybe their bodies really were messed up. But literally, Nagito's hand, Fuyuhiko's eye, and that's about it. Literally the only ways their bodies are mangled are the ways that they specifically told them about in the past game. Which seems very narratively convenient. They should have to go through some rehabilitation physically. They should be kind of traumatized, and I feel like they wouldn't feel like their deaths were cheapened so much. It feels like they just revived Superman for the 15th time. You know what I mean?
I get what you mean.
So I really didn't care for this narrative decision, even if I do like the characters. It just seems cheap to me. And it's not something Danganronpa usually does. This is the biggest example of that.
Yeah, in the first Killing Game, everyone who died stayed dead.
Yeah, basically. Except for Chihiro. But even then, you can do it, but just try to do it well. Chihiro survived because of an AI, right? Yeah.
Kyoko had brought Makoto to Future Foundation's headquarters, and Aoi and Yasuhiro came to support him as well. Byakuya wanted nothing to do with the trial, and he went elsewhere.
Kazuo knew the trial would be the opportunity to gather the heads of most of the divisions and begin the game. He invited most of the division heads, aside from Ryota, the head of the 10th division, but the head of the 13th division would not be able to come.
Who's that?
I don't know.
Why did you specifically mention that they weren't able to come?
Because there's a certain number of divisions they have, and the 13th division canceled.
Oh, because there isn't an amount that would Okay, then. Monica, meanwhile, still ruled most of Towa City. She changed her plans, now trying to become Junko's successor herself. However, the time she spent with Nagito had instilled a doubt within her regarding Junko's ideals. She focused most of her efforts on trying to defeat Komaru and Toko, who were now the de facto peacemakers in Towa City.
Komaru and Toko's relationship had become more intimate, but they still worked on behalf of the interests of Future Foundation. Masaru, Jotaro, Kotoko, and Nagisa acted as informants for Komaru, giving her intel on Monica, but Komaru did not reveal their survival to Future Foundation. It's their crimes would have got them severely punished, but she's they're kids, Yeah.
Monica proliferated her robotic operations, using the Monokumas in Towa City as a personal army. She hacked into Future Foundation and learned of Kazuo's machinations. She decided that becoming a participant in the killing game would be the best way to live up to Junko's ideals. She sent Monokumas to surreptitiously kidnap Maya, the 7th Division head of Future Foundation.
Monica designed an android that matched Maya's appearance to replace her. The android used a motorized wheelchair with a monitor displaying her avatar Usami, who spoke for her, just like the real Maya. However, Monica made sure that this alter ego Maya was outfitted with a lot of weaponry. Monica strangled Maya to death, and then sent the android to Future Foundation's headquarters in Maya's place, and she controlled her remotely from her lair in Towa City. So, there's 2 characters in wheelchairs, 2 disabled characters in this series, right? Mm-hmm. One of them strangles the other.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I don't like that. Maya seemed like she was nice. Uh-huh. Monica is a brat?
Yep.
To say the least?
Yep.
Genocidal maniac, to say the most?
Before Makoto arrived for his trial, Kazuo assassinated all of the guards stationed at the headquarters. However, unbeknownst to Kazuo, Chisa had invited Ryota as well, meddling with his plans.
Kazuo was in a meeting with the division heads when Makoto, Kyoko, and Aoi entered the room. Yasuhiro was waiting outside. The meeting was heated as heated as Kyosuke's faction wanted Makoto to face execution for his actions with the remnants of despair.
Right before Kazuo's trap sprung, Ryota had entered the room to join the meeting, much to Kazuo's surprise. The room filled with sleeping gas and knocked everyone out, aside from Kazuo. Kazuo specifically hadn't wanted Ryota to be our participant. He wanted Ryota to watch the broadcast from afar and finish his masterpiece in a place of safety. However, Ryota was now involved, and so Kazuo had to improvise.
Kazuo moved the participants to the underground portion of the building and blocked off all exits and entrances to the building. He gave each of them a bangle that would regulate the game, including himself. He then began the program to run what Monokuma called the final killing game. He had intended to broadcast it, but now that Ryota was a participant, there was no point in doing so. So Kazuo did not broadcast this game. Let's take another step back. 2016, Team Danganronpa released a popular anime called Danganronpa 3: The End of Hope's Peak Academy, where they fleshed out the Hope's Peak Academy narrative known as the Despair Arc, as well as wrapping it up with another called the Future Arc.
Roughly 5 years after Despair, the final killing game began while everyone slept in the duplicate meeting room in the underground building of Future Foundation's headquarters. The rules of the autonomous program would involve drug regulation, as dispensed by the Bangles. The game was divided into 2-hour intervals where the participants would be periodically injected with the sleeping drug after each time limit.
After the injection, the participant who was nearest a monitor would be awoken with a stimulant. Monokuma's Gloomy Sunday would play on the monitor and dispense a knife, making the participant kill themselves. The game would conclude whenever the killing stopped happening.
Each bangle had an NG code that stated each participant's forbidden action. Each action had been determined by Kazuo to balance the game in heightened despair. If a participant performed their forbidden action, as determined by the autonomous program, they would be injected with the drug that would kill them. If they forced the bangle off their wrists, then the drug would also be injected to kill them anyway.
The participants of the final killing game included Makoto Naegi, whose NG code was running in the hallway, Aoi Asahina, whose NG code was be hit with a punch or kick, Kyoko Kirigiri, whose NG code was passing the 4th time limit with Makoto Naegi alive, Kyosuke Munakata, whose NG code was opening a door, Ryoto Mitarai, whose NG code was using your talent, Juzo Sakakura, whose NG code was hitting anyone with bare hands, Chisa Yukizome, whose NG code was Kyosuke Munakata dying, Daisaku Bandai, whose NG code was witnessing violence by participants, the Great Gozu, whose NG code was being pinned to the ground for a 3 count, Kazuo Tengen, whose NG code was answering a question with a lie. Psycho Kimura, whose NG code was letting anyone step on your shadow. Sanosuke Izuyoi, whose NG code was putting food in your mouth. Koichi Kizakura, whose NG code was opening left hand. Alter Ego Maya, whose NG code was turning right. And Ruroka Ando, whose NG code was someone leaving the playing field.
During the initial sleeping interval, Kazuo was happy to ensure that Chisa was the closest to the monitor. She awoke and saw Monokuma's gloomy sundae. She hung herself to the chandelier and stabbed herself.
You see how he did that on purpose? Like, he was biased. That was his revenge on her for her being a spy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When the remaining participants awoke, pre-recorded footage of Monokuma explained the rules of the final killing game to them. However, Monokuma falsely insisted that the footage was live and broadcasting. Monokuma also misled them to believe that the one killing them was a traitor or attacker among them. Only Kazuo knew that Monokuma's gloomy sundae made all of them the attackers.
Monokuma then revealed the game had already started, and the participants realized that Chisa had been killed. During the heated argument that followed, Juzo hit Makoto, triggering Daisuke's forbidden action, killing Daisuke. Kyosuke, meanwhile, took Chisa's death as vindication that he had been too forgiving. Immediately, he and Juzo turned on Makoto's supporters, and everyone fled as the participants split off to murder each other in the hopes of stopping the game or killing the traitor among them.
Okay, so first of all, Daisuke's character is a racist joke. Mm-hmm. He's one of the few black characters in the game, and his whole thing is like, give him a girl voice to make him sound funny and make him an African-American stereotype or something. It's horrible. He only existed for 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting. You do better, Japan. Do better, whatever this guy's name. Kadaka, he was the writer for Danganronpa that we hate.
Is he the writer for the anime too?
Yes. And this was when his influence was pretty strong.
Yeah.
He probably thought that was funny. Who knows? Anyway, death of the author, right? The second thing is Munakata, the guy we called the Tenki. His girlfriend's dead, so now he's on a rampage.
Yeah.
Okay. Makoto, Aoi, Maya, and the Great Gozu teamed up together and hid inside a room when the sleeping drug went into effect. The Great Gozu was closest to a monitor. When he saw Monokuma's gloomy sundae, he killed himself by smashing his head into the ceiling, stringing himself in the rafters, and stabbing himself. Maya was the first to awake, and she put ketchup on Aoi as a prank. Moments later, when the rest awoke, Makoto panicked when he thought Aoi had died, but then he realized the Great Gozu had actually died.
Ruroka and Sanosuke as a couple blamed Psycho for their predicament and persecuted her. Psycho, in response, consumed a bunch of steroids that made her monstrously strong, and she chased Ruroka and Sanosuke down.
Psycho is literally the best character in this one, right?
Yeah.
She's a pharmacist, which is interesting, but you just feel so sorry for her, and she didn't deserve any of the crap that Ruroka gives her.
No, she did not.
Meanwhile, Makoto went to the monitoring room to speak on the intercom in the hopes of getting everyone to stop killing each other, but Kyosuke didn't care. He captured Makoto and held him hostage. Kazuo, Maya, and Aoi came to rescue him. Maya and Aoi escaped with Makoto, leaving Kazuo behind in a fierce fight with Kyosuke. Kyosuke told Juzo to go after Makoto and his friends. Oh, by the way, the Great Gozu's dead now. He didn't last very long, but he was also a really nice guy. I don't know what it is with Danganronpa and having these really buff, muscular men that are also real sweethearts, but that describes the Great Gozu. Yep. It's unfortunate what became of him. Anyway, let's get back into Munakata's rampage.
Maya fought Juzo to let Makoto and Aoi escape. She fired missiles at him, but Juzo dodged them and knocked Maya out of her chair. Juzo escaped while Monika rebooted Maya.
That was such a twist, by the way, when you find out Maya's a robot. Mm-hmm. Psycho fought Sanosuke with a brute strength and knives, respectively, while Ruroka watched. Ruroka and Sanosuke managed to escape Psycho's wrath. They hid in a room, but Sanosuke found Monokuma's secret entrance. Because of Ruroka's forbidden action, they agreed to hide the door with a bookshelf. Remember, if anyone left the game, she would die. Mm-hmm. So he helped her hide it, because, they're a couple.
However, Rurika was terrified that Sanosuke, knowing her forbidden action, would lead him to betray her. To prevent that from happening, she kissed him, moving a piece of candy from her mouth into his, triggering his forbidden action, killing him. Even as she killed him, he claimed to still love her. She then tampered with the crime scene to make it seem like the attacker had killed him. Rurika is literally the worst person.
She is disgusting. He gave everything to her. He loved her. And, he was a garbage person too, but he was willing to sacrifice himself for her, and she was not willing to do the same. Because his forbidden action, was eating candy or anything in his mouth, and she gave him candy. That's just... Meanwhile, Kyosuke investigated the bodies of those who had died so far. Meanwhile, Kyoko investigated the bodies of those who had died so far to learn what was happening to them, while Koichi and Ryota tagged along.
Kyosuke eventually impaled Kazuo with rebar. He asked Kazuo who the attacker was, to which Kazuo responded that they all were. He then bled to death. Kyosuke snapped, and he planned to eliminate the despair in all of them. Kyosuke found some psychosteroids and injected himself with them to become even fiercer with his sword.
See, Kyosuke fundamentally misunderstands the brainwashing. He just thinks that, human beings deep down are all evil, and he's like, I'm gonna murder all of them. He has gone off the deep end. I don't even know if calling him a tanky is fair anymore. He's just gone fascist. Psycho lamented that she had made a cure for the killing drug in the bangle, but couldn't self-administer it. The sleeping drug went into effect, putting everyone to sleep. Psycho was the closest to a monitor. When she saw Monokuma's gloomy Sunday, she killed herself by smashing into a wall and stabbing herself. Also, by the way, that scene was badly written. Psycho was allergic to sweets, so she could have killed herself very simply by eating a piece of candy. But it's obvious they didn't want to do that since they had already used that on Sanosuke.
Kyosuke returned to Chisa's body and found a photo on her person that showed her killing children. And so Kyosuke discovered that she had been a remnant of despair.
Kyoko, Koichi, and Ryota found Rurika with Sanosuke's body, and Kyoko began to investigate the crime scene, finding this one suspicious. Koichi disabled most of the traps Sanosuke had set up before he died.
Makoto, Aoi, and Maya returned to the monitoring room. Maya hooked herself into the security cameras so they could surveil the situation and see who had died so far. Maya established a connection so that they could contact Byakuya, who vowed to send help right away. He also warned them that Kyosuke's military fleet was headed towards Jabberwock Island.
While Maya functioned as a conduit for Makoto's call with Byakuya, Monika turned towards local endeavors where she was, in Toa City. Nagisa informed Toko and Kamaru where Monika was located. Toko and Kamaru fought off hordes of Monokumas and other robots that Monika sent in the hopes of defeating them.
When Toko and Kamaru reached her lair and prepared to fight Monika, Monika suddenly gave up. She said it was hard to fight for despair when she was hoping to defeat them, and she said that she was giving up on being the next Junko. She blamed Nagito's constant talking of hope and despair for instilling doubt in her that any of it was worthwhile.
Okay, this is weird. I'm not going to say it's an amazing twist, but I think it's funny enough to be worth it. Because first of all, this anime was short, too short. So this was a way of wrapping up the Toa City plot quickly. But also, the whole thing's played as Monika's entering her teenage years. She's probably around 13 now. And Nagito, having raised her for much of her life, right? It was hope, despair. And so she's just you know what? I don't even care anymore. I just think it's funny. Monika retreated to a Monokuma van that she had designed as a mobile shelter and stocked with supplies, junk food, and video games. She decided that life was pointless. 4 Monokumas attached to her van, transforming it into a rocket ship that blasted into the sky, where Monika could be alone forever. I guess that's one way to escape your war crimes.
Toko and Kamaru hacked into Maya's connection and spoke to Makoto and Aoi about what had happened with Monika. However, Kyosuke interrupted the conversation and Maya disconnected the communication. With Monika no longer controlling her, Maya entered autonomous functionality and transformed into a form for combat.
That's why we've been calling her Maya, alter ego Maya, because even though Monika was controlling her, she can function autonomously.
Yeah.
She just has Maya's appearance instead of personality. During Kyoko's investigation, Juzo intervened to try to kill them. During his standoff with Koichi, Ruroka triggered a trap that opened a pit beneath Koichi and Kyoko. Remembering a promise he had made to Jin to keep his daughter safe, Koichi grabbed Kyoko and threw her upwards, saving her life. However, opening his hand was his forbidden action. He was poisoned, fell down into the pit, and died.
Kyoko revealed that Ruroka had killed Sanosuke, and she revealed Monokuma's secret entrance. When Juzo tried to escape through it, he and Ruroka got into a fight. Kyoko and Ryota escaped while they fought. Eventually, Ruroka escaped when Juzo discovered that Monokuma's secret entrance wasn't an escape from the game at all.
Byakuya arrived at the headquarters and met Yasuhiro, who was waiting outside. Future Foundation detonated their way past the rubble inside the building only to discover the building was rigged to explode. But only the top half. The game continued underground.
Kyosuke and Maya had a fierce battle, but Kyosuke used her explosives against her. He then ripped the smartphone from her chest that functioned as her CPU and sliced her in half. On the smartphone, Kyosuke found that Maya had learned each participant's forbidden action.
Makoto, Aoi, Kyoko, and Ryota teamed up and hid inside a storage room, where they spoke about everything they had gone through. Kyoko had found Psycho's cure and brought it with her. She took her gloves off, revealing her burned hands, so that she could hold hands with Makoto one last time. She knew her time may be short. This is a big moment for her, because she's always worn those gloves since her burn, you know? People ship it.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Juzo met up with Kyosuke, and he began to make a confession to Kyosuke about Junko blackmailing him by threatening to expose his feelings for Kyosuke. However, before he could finish speaking, Kyosuke impaled him as punishment for his betrayal.
This is the finale to that conflict we brought up many episodes back, where it was the whole homophobia society thing. He worked with Junko, but he was confessing his love to his man and just stabs him for his betrayal because Kyosuke does not care. He is blind fury, anti-despair. If you sympathize with despair even a little, you're dead to him. Ruroka was alone, barricading a door to her room when the sleeping drug went into effect, putting everyone to sleep. Ruroka was the closest to a monitor. When she saw Monokuma's gloomy Sunday, she killed herself by stabbing herself repeatedly. This scene was really sad. It was very clearly shot like she had killed off everyone important to her in her life because she was terrified of someone betraying her. And in the end, she had no one there to save her. You know?
When everyone awoke, Kyoko's forbidden action was triggered by Makoto still being alive, and she was poisoned. When Makoto, Aoi, and Ryota discovered this, they were distraught. However, they found the cure in her hand and attempted to inject it to counteract the drug. They had no response, but Kyosuke called over the intercom to demand Makoto to face him again.
So that was a sad moment. Kyoko is literally the most favorite character in this entire series. And I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I guess I get it. She's pretty cool, but she's a strong female character, but people love her, absolutely love her. So they were devastated by this. Makoto confronted Kyosuke, and with Aoi's help, they tricked him into trapping himself in a room with Makoto. If he killed Makoto, he would be trapped in the room, unable to open a door due to his forbidden action. That was actually really clever. Makoto used this as an opportunity to talk sense to Kyosuke, and Aoi brought Kyoko's logbook where she had written notes that detailed the attacker's murderers must have been suicides.
They decided to test Kyoko's theory by tying Makoto up and placing him in front of a monitor before the next interval, hoping he would be restrained enough to not kill himself. Juzo, meanwhile, was still bleeding out from his stab wound. He decided to spend his last moments doing some good, and so he cut his hand off, thereby removing the bangle.
Ooh, someone was going to do that, and it was him. Of course it was him. They waited until the sleeping drug went into effect, putting everyone to sleep. Makoto was the closest to a monitor. When he saw Monokuma's gloomy Sunday, his restraints failed to keep him safe. He cut his way out of with the knife and was about to kill himself when Juzo, no longer affected by the bangle, snapped Makoto out of his trance.
Juzo then crawled his way to the breaker room that was accessible via the underwater balcony via Monokuma's special entrance. He spent the last of his energy turning the breakers off. Makoto yelled at Kyosuke to go to Juzo before it was
Can I stop you?
Why?
Because this moment is like so like romantic.
Yeah.
Because like Juzo obviously loves Kyosuke, and Kyosuke's probably never really thought about how he felt about Juzo. Mm-hmm. It's implied he might have reciprocated if he had even spared a moment to think about it. Because at this moment, when Juzo is single-handedly trying to save all their lives and trying to earn his redemption, Kyosuke's kind of snapping out of his like tirade, right? Mm-hmm. And Makoto's like, go get your man, go. Yeah. And he goes, he runs, like he starts running, and Makoto's like, go. And he starts like running faster and then finish it.
Makoto yelled at Kyosuke to go to Juzo before it was too late, and Kyosuke sprinted towards Juzo in the hopes of making things right between them. He was too late, and Juzo had bled to death by the time Kyosuke arrived. So he better regret that for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I mean, Juzo, I have many problems with Juzo.
Absolutely.
But it was a beautiful moment, a tragically beautiful moment. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I guess just takeaway lesson here, be nice to gay people, and gay people, find your man. Don't wait. Is that okay to say?
Sure.
Okay. Meanwhile, Byakuya had arrived to Future Foundation's headquarters. In addition, Class 77B had fought off all the Future Foundation forces and sailed towards Future Foundation before docking on the island.
Juzo had succeeded in turning the main power off, and the building switched to backup power. All the mangles deactivated, and a pre-recorded message Kazuo had made sent to Ryota's phone. In the message, Kazuo pretended to be a remnant of despair, spurring Ryota to make his decision to finish his masterpiece, the Hope video.
Makoto and Aoi were opposed to Ryota's decision to force hope onto the world at the cost of free will, and so Ryota showed the Hope video to Aoi. Ryota made it clear to Aoi that stopping him from bringing hope to the world was unacceptable, and so she restrained Makoto. So Aoi's brainwashed into hope now. Hope brainwashing. We had despair brainwashing, now we have a hope brainwashing.
Mm-hmm. Future Foundation soldiers managed to finally drill down into the building to rescue the participants, but Ryota showed them the Hope video, turning them to his side. Kyosuke snapped Aoi out of her trance, and the three of them fought off soldiers and fled.
Ryota escaped the underground building and ran towards the broadcast tower on the same island. He began uploading the Hope video, giving it 30 minutes to broadcast around the world, after which point the effect would be permanent upon everyone who saw it. Until then, Future Foundation soldiers protected him. I guess his brainwashing was just less efficient than Junko's. Junko's, you had to watch it for like 30 seconds and you were done.
Yeah.
30 minutes for his, I guess.
Maybe it just didn't get to where it was going for 30 minutes because it was...
No. You had to be watching it for 30 minutes.
Oh, well, no, because he managed to brainwash the soldiers really quickly. And Aoi.
No, for it to be permanent.
Oh, I see. Byakuya, Yasuhiro, Makoto, Aoi, and Kyosuke struggled to fight Future Foundation's forces, but then Class 77B arrived to assist their fight against those brainwashed by hope. Future Foundation's forces included the Ultimate Elite Task Force, which consisted of the Ultimate Discus Thrower, the Ultimate Falconer, the Ultimate Performer, the Ultimate Nailless, and the Ultimate Marksman. The Ultimate Imposter teamed up with Kyosuke, even while disguising himself as Kyosuke.
Two Kyosukes!
In the end, Class 77B defeated the brainwashed soldiers with ease.
Hajime and Class 77... Oh, I just want to say, you know how Nagito fought in that battle? He kicked a pebble, and the pebble hit a rock, and the rock hit a boulder, and the boulder hit a mountain, and the mountain collapsed. Hajime and Class 77B confronted Ryota in the broadcast tower, and they tried to talk him down. Ryota claimed that the Hope video was the only way to rid the world of despair, and it was the only way to erase the damage he had done to the world by making the despair video in the first place.
Hajime and Class 77B told him they understood what it was like to commit such serious crimes and wrongdoing. They asked him to join them in seeking atonement for their sins, and Ryota cried at the sight of such pure forgiveness. He agreed and turned off the broadcast, cutting off the Hope video just in time for it to be non-permanent.
With the final killing game finally over, the surviving participants, Future Foundation, and the former remnants of Despair could cooperate for recovery efforts. Mikon found Kyoko had survived her poison, and she nursed her back to health. She's not dead, yay! Nagito met Makoto and possibly fell in love with him. Like, literally, this is the first time the two lucky students, like, crossed each other's paths since all this stuff went down.
Yep.
And, like, you know, Makoto's like the ultimate hope or whatnot, and that's what Nagito idolizes.
Yeah.
So, like, when Nagito sees him, he's like, oh, I've heard about you.
Yeah. Class 77B and Hajime broadcasted an ominous message telling the world that they were responsible for Future Foundation's dissolution, pretending that they were still remnants of Despair. They decided Despair would be received by the world as a better villain than the Hope video motive.
I think they were worried about people thinking Hope had caused this, so they wanted to be the scapegoat, you know? I don't like the lying, but I guess I get the logic. Class 77B, Hajime, and Ryota got back on their vessel and sailed back to Jabberwock Island, where they would remain in hiding. While sailing, Hajime conversed with a copy of Chiaki in his mind.
Roughly 6.
It was sweet.
Yeah.
It's like he carries a part of her with him.
Roughly 6 years after Despair. With the remnants of Despair gone and the Despair video no longer being broadcast, people around the world began rebuilding societies, and in time, countries. Some things were similar to how things had been before the tragedy, but many things were different.
Makoto dreamt of rebuilding his school and doing it right this time around. Makoto, Kamaru, Toko, Kyoko, Aoi, Byakuya, and Yasuhiro helped in the reconstruction. When it was complete, Makoto became the headmaster, overseeing the new Hope's Peak Academy, and he was romantically engaged with Kyoko.
Really?
Romantically engaged in some fashion, basically.
How is there proof of that?
Yes, yeah, okay. They mention it.
Okay. As the world recovered from despair, many forgot an extremely dangerous loose end, particularly that Junko refused to ever die. Monokuma III had only been involved with the setup of the final killing game, and so Junko did not perish within it. At some point, Junko managed to transfer her AI into a cloned body of herself, much like the Makuro clones of the past.
In addition, Chisa was cloned. Chisa remembered her past but was not brainwashed. Junko and Chisa reviewed the footage of the final killing game and their past deaths as they discussed what came next.
What? So those were clones of them?
It's the only explanation that makes sense, you could call that speculation, but considering what comes next, I would wager it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
What came next was that Team Danganronpa continued to release sequels in the Danganronpa series. Each game was a huge success, accumulating a more massive audience each time. The graphics became more realistic each time as well. The narratives often featured returning characters, but just as often they went in ridiculous and unparalleled directions with each twist. Each time, however, the narrative continued to heighten the conflict of hope versus despair. There was a reason we kept talking about the releases of the games.
Yep.
Team Danganronpa's next 7 hugely successful games were next Danganronpa 4, Despair Beyond Hope, first Danganronpa 5, Monokuma Returns, Dream Danganronpa 6, Hope's Name, Shin Danganronpa 7, Despair vs. Hope, the return of Danganronpa 8, A New Hope and Despair, Miracle Danganronpa 9, Despair's Counterattack, and Anniversary Danganronpa 10, Birth of Despair. Like, we're going full meta here. Full meta.
Yep. Team Danganronpa continued to release sequels, with the games redefining the video game genre and pushing the technology to its limit. The popularity of the series soared. By the time that Danganronpa 51 was released, the state of the real world had changed considerably. People lived in isolation, depending on media content to supplement their lives. The structure of corporate society declared itself to be just and fair, though many people vehemently disagreed.
Team Danganronpa had perfected a technology that had gradually evolved called ultimate real fiction. It involved hiring actors to play the characters, alongside the use of advanced robotics and an augmented reality playing environment within an artificially constructed set. Furthermore, the actors would have their minds altered so they could become actual Danganronpa characters.
Most of the established narrative of Danganronpa would only be known to those who kept track of the series lore, but the first 3 entries in the Danganronpa fiction were the foundation of the narrative. Succeeding games built on top of that lore, often retconning details, particularly when it seemed despair had lost. Nevertheless, the fiction of Danganronpa advanced towards the future over the years.
Now, I think we're going to have to cut it off there. Because,
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah. Because now we have to get into...
Because now we're going to delve back into the world. So we're going to start doing this thing more often than we already have been doing, where we delve in and out of Danganronpa, in and out of the metafiction. Because what we just talked about right there, like that was in the meta world. And now we're going to go back in and talk about what becomes after society rebuilds within the Danganronpa universe over the course of Danganronpa 4 through 51.
Yeah.
I don't want to stop. Let's keep going.
No. We shouldn't. We'll get to all this later.
Can we just do a few paragraphs? We have a little bit of time. Please. Please.
It's better for us to start this next time.
No, we'll start with the births next time, okay? Start with births.
Whatever, fine.
Yes, thank you. As most societies rebuilt from the aftermath of the tragedy, the world entered a humble era that many may have called the most peaceful in the modern age. However, unbeknownst to most of the world, despair hadn't disappeared alongside the remnants of despair. Despair lived on because Junko lived on.
Junko decided she would use the cloning technology to never die, and she would keep doing killing games that would ultimately remain secret. She never cloned herself to have more than one of her running the show at any given time, though she'd always have clone backups on standby. Naturally, she'd also play the Monokuma character via robots she stockpiled each time. However, every time, Hope would win, and she would die. Each Junko, upon taking the mantle of the mastermind, would call herself by her sequential number.
Makoto ran the new Hope's Peak Academy in an effort to reclaim its reputation and make it a beacon of hope for the world during its recovery. He began a program called the Ultimate Initiative that would allow Ultimates to go to Hope's Peak once again. The Ultimate Initiative either consisted of scouting that would find ultimate talents or allowed for an application process for anyone to prove they had an ultimate talent.
All right, and we'll leave it there.
Yeah, why did I say either or like that? We will see next time. Okay, well, we have a Twitter, Game Theorems, we have a Patreon. Check out our podcast, share it. Bye.
Bye.